position, and then they've got a really good secondary with Bubba Bolden, Al Blades Jr., other guys. They got Nesta Jade Silvera on the defensive line, and Zach McLean moving down from linebacker to the defensive end. I think that's going to help them a lot. They're going to need to find some pass rush for sure. That first game against Alabama will certainly be a really good test. Arizona State is also a team that you could see climbing. The Jaden Daniels at quarterback is a very good player. They got good running backs with White and Tranium. And they got really good defense with Darian Butler, Merlin Robertson, Jermaine Lelay, DJ Davidson, a couple corners with Jack Jones and Chase Lucas on the outside. So they did lose a Shari Crosswell as safety. It's going to be a little hard to replace. And they don't have great wide receivers, at least yet, that no household names yet. So we'll see if someone emerges from that role. They could be a very, very talented team and a good pick out west in the Pac-12. I think Texas at 21 is a good spot for where they are now. They really need to temper expectations, and I know Texas is one of those national brand programs that needs to be competing for championships and is a little impatient with their coaches and everything. But, they might not quite be there yet, especially with some of the departures they've had since Sarkisian came in. They've added some solid players, but the Longhorns, you need to. I think it's more of a 8-4 type of year, maybe. Nothing better than that. I don't think, unless all of a sudden Sarkisian works some kind of miracle or something. And that first game against Louisiana, I'll talk about in my football podcast on a different channel. That's going to be a tough one, and it could be a rivalry game that comes up. I could also see Liberty, Oklahoma State, and Boston College kind of sneaking into those with good performances. In terms of the coaches poll, it's a lot of the same. It's not favorable to the group of 5 schools. It has Cincinnati dropping all the way down to 10 and jumping behind North Carolina. But it gives respect to North Carolina a little bit in the top 10, up at 9. The top 6, like I said, are the same. Favorable to SEC, it has 6 SEC teams in. It's really, as opposed to 5 in the AP poll. I know that's, again, kind of a nitpick. And the AP poll has 4 Pac-12 teams. Coaches poll only has 2. So, glean from that what you will. Oklahoma State jumps in at the bottom. Coastal Carolina kind of falls down a little bit. I think they could be a pretty good team again this year. And it has Ole Miss in the top 25. I'm not ready to do that. Matt Corral, Jaron Ely, couple good receivers. I'm not ready to put them in the top 25 yet. I think they're close, and a couple of wins could get them in there, but you got to see the play on the field instead of just hearing the talk. And so they're going to have to prove it in my book. The MLB playoff races have been heating up. The Tampa Bay Rays still lead the AL East, but the Yankees have gone on a bit of a hot streak recently. They're still 4.5 games behind the Rays, but they've passed the Boston Red Sox, who faded, and honestly, their pitching's come back down to earth. They're not pitching nearly as well, especially the closer Matt Barnes, given an extension, and really hasn't pitched well since he signed that extension. The AL Central, even more so, belongs to the Chicago White Sox right now. They're 9 games ahead of the Cleveland Indians. 12 games ahead of the Tigers, 16 ahead of Kansas City, and 17 ahead of Minnesota, who shockingly became in last place. They were expected to play well and be a playoff team this year, in most circles, I believe. The AL West seems to be coming down to Houston and Oakland, with Houston having a pretty sizable 5-game lead at this point. Again, there's still, a month left in the season, essentially, so it's time to catch up at that point. And then the Yankees currently sit in a wild card spot with the Red Sox right there in the other wild card spot behind the Yankees by 3 games. But Oakland is just a game and a half behind Boston, and Seattle is making a push at 2.5 behind Boston, despite not really doing anything at the trade deadline. Toronto is also still in the hunt at 4.5, and that is about where the AL wildcard race stops, as the rest of the teams are at least 8 games out. So, with a month left, division leaders are pretty much wrapped up, at least in the AL, pretty much wrapped up, and then your playoff race looks like it's between 5 different teams. Out west, it's a little tougher for some teams. The NL East has had a bit of a shakeup. The Mets have faltered since Jacob deGrom's injury, so they really need him back. Phillies still technically alive, but they're 5.5 back in the division, and Atlanta's taken over that division. Made some moves at the deadline to make that roster deeper, especially with the injuries they've had, and it's paid off so far. They're in control of the NL East. Milwaukee still very much in control of the NL Central. The races in the Central have not been great this year. Cincinnati's the next closest team at 9.5 back. So the Reds probably won't be winning the division, but they're still in wild card contention. They currently hold the final wild card spot in the National League by a game over the Padres as we speak. The Dodgers are the top wildcard team in the NL West, and that doesn't look like it's going to change. They've got an 11.5 game lead over the second wildcard. The Giants currently lead the West by 2.5 games over the Dodgers, and the Padres, who are still in contention for the wildcard playoff spot, are 15.5 behind the Giants. So that tells you how well the Giants have been playing. They're one of 2 teams in Major League Baseball that have 80 wins this year. That would be the Giants and the Dodgers, both in the same division. And in terms of the NL wild card, like I said, Cincinnati has the final spot right now. San Diego, St. Louis, and Philly are all within 5 games of that spot. So there could still be some movement there, but it's looking like it's all but one spot set out in the National League. After a rocky start to the Olympics, Team USA was able to overcome some early uncharacteristic losses and win the gold medal. Now, I think those losses, while they've been uncharacteristic in the past, may not be so much in the future if USA continues on this kind of path in basketball. The difference with this year's roster as compared to all the other ones is it wasn't anywhere near as loaded with the superstars that have been playing on there since the 92 Dream Team, where the USA clearly had all the better players. The gap in competition was not nearly as obvious this year with the USA and all the other teams, and I think that's because, one, other countries are developing more talent and getting more players to the NBA, essentially getting better like they're supposed to, and two, a lot of the players for these other teams for these other countries have played together in national competitions throughout the year, have had time. I mean, obviously it could be a little different because of COVID, but they've had time spent together, kind of molding that team chemistry that Team USA clearly didn't have, and Team USA would have been, quite frankly, lost without Kevin Durant. I mean, none of the superstars on. Well, first of all, you look at the Team USA roster on their website. They're outside of Durant and Damian Lillard and maybe Devin Booker. There are no other superstars. You used to have teams loaded with superstars, but now the superstars in the NBA are not just U.S.-born players, and you have to realize that when you're playing against other countries. France has become a very, very good developing country. You got Australia's got some good players. Spain has been good in the past. Argentina's developed some good players. Slovenia, especially with Luka, definitely getting better. So the talent gap is much, much closer than it has been. And the way the U.S. can get back to that is, number one, name the guys on the team earlier, get them to develop chemistry and be able to play together. And two, get some notable superstars from the league playing on the team. Like I said, they had Durant, they had Lillard, they had Booker, but again, this is with everybody being healthy. Injuries will come into play and everything like that. And LeBron and Chris Paul and those guys have said, it's past their time. It's kind of time for these other guys to come in. So, future superstars. Donovan Mitchell's lighting it up. Where's Kawhi? James Harden, Paul George, Westbrook. Lesser superstars, not superstars, but really good all-star players. Julius Randle, C.J. McCollum. Klay Thompson's been hurt, so that one was obvious. But you get Curry playing on there, Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal, Jamal Murray, Karl Anthony Towns. And hey, maybe some of these younger guys that haven't barely made any noise in the league yet, but are projected to be or on the path to becoming superstars. Zion Williamson, Cade Cunningham, Anthony Edwards, Trae Young, John Morant, guys like that. Find ways to bring even more members of the upper echelon talent in the league onto the roster. The NHL has announced a somewhat new sponsorship. I'm going to call it a quirk. I don't really know what else to call it. Basically, the NHL will start allowing advertisements on jerseys. The NBA has used it. It's a commonly used thing in hockey and basketball leagues overseas. You see them, jerseys just littered with ads. I think they'll do them in cycling and stuff like that. I think it kind of ruins the look of the uniform if you do what the overseas teams kind of do and just have 10 ads on a uniform. Suddenly you're just you're kind of just a walking billboard, and it doesn't seem like much of a player of the team. It takes away from tension from the team, which I know the point of the ads is to get company branding out, but sometimes it just distracts from the team. Now, I have no problem if they want to do something like what they've been doing with the helmet sponsors, where they have a specific company logo on the helmet, have a specific company logo or maybe 2 or 3 on the jersey, or what the NBA does with their one main uniform sponsor. And I would have no problem if they're going to do something like that. Again, I haven't looked at the specifics of their new policy and how it's going to work, but I think it ruins the overrunning with the ads, oversaturating the jersey with the ads, ruins the